Grandma overhears a pastor's shocking plan in church, and her brave words stun everyone. The morning sun poured through the stained glass windows of Maplewood Church, casting vibrant colors across the wooden pews like a warm embrace. Soft whispers floated in the air, mingling with the scent of freshly brewed coffee from the small kitchen. Families gathered, their faces glowing with the serene expectation of a peaceful Sunday service. But as Grandma Ruth sidled into smile, Ruth settled in, shifting her weight nervously as her ears picked up muffled voices from the church office, the door slightly ajar. Curiosity piqued, she leaned in just a little closer. "Why, if we—" she heard, the voice trailing off. Ruth's heart raced. What could possibly be so important? She strained to catch every word. "It's simple," Pastor Reynolds continued, his tone slick and persuasive. "We'll host a fundraiser, but we'll direct the donations into a new community project. My project. We can convince them it's for the greater good, while I reap the rewards. They trust me. They'll never see it coming." Ruth's breath hitched. Trust, the very bedrock of their community, shattered in an instant. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach, a lump forming in her throat. Memories of Pastor Reynolds' kind eyes and gentle demeanor crashed down around her, now tainted with betrayal. He was the same man who had held her hand through her darkest days. How could he betray those who looked up to him, the vulnerable souls in their quaint little town? Images flooded her mind. The single mothers, the elderly, the jobless, all of them hanging on his every word, hoping for guidance and support. And here he was, ready to exploit their faith for personal gain. The shock wrapped around her like a cold shroud. As the service started and the congregation settled in, Ruth's heart raced. She could feel uncertainty seeping into her very bones. Courage surged through her, battling the fear that threatened to silence her. She couldn't bear the weight of this discovery alone. She had to say something, had to warn the others. With trembling hands, she stood, her voice steady but quaking with emotion. "Brothers and sisters, I have something to share. It's about our pastor. It's about a plan to take advantage of our trust." Gasps echoed through the church, setting off a wave of murmurs rippling through the crowd. Faces turned pale, disbelief painted across their features. Whispers of betrayal and confusion mingled with a sense of urgency. As the tension grew thicker, Ruth felt the eyes of the congregation burning into her. They were grappling with their faith, their loyalty split wide open. Would they believe her? Or would this lead to a fracture that could never be healed? The weight of the room intensified. Ruth tucked her hair behind her ears, uncertain of what her revelation would mean for Maplewood. But the truth had leaped out, raw and unfiltered, leaving everyone to ponder a future that felt suddenly sinister. Would her bravery light a path forward, or summon the shadows hidden beneath their fragile faith? Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And since you're here, smash that like button because it really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Ruth's voice hung in the air like a heavy fog, wrapping around the shocked congregation. Gasps echoed, eyes widened, and faces paled. Families clutched each other tightly, each member grappling with the sudden revelation. A hushed murmurs rushed to fill the stillness. "What are you saying?" A voice broke through the chaos. It was Sarah, the quiet woman from the back, her face both pale and filled with disbelief. "Ruth, you can't be serious!" Another voice protested, belonging to Michael, the church treasurer. But before Ruth could respond, a loud thud echoed from the back of the church, cutting through the turmoil. Everyone turned to see a figure collapse on the floor. An elderly man, Mr. Hargrove, who had been sitting quietly in the last pew. "Someone help!" shouted a frantic voice. As people rushed to his side, Ruth's heart pounded. Shadows of fear whipped through the crowd. The man lay still, breath shallow, his hand clutching his chest. Within moments, the atmosphere shifted again. A ripple of panic surging through the parishioners. Ruth stood paralyzed, uncertainty flooding her veins. Was this fate, a twisted distraction to bury the truth? Or was it a sign, a warning from something greater? Just then, the side door swung open, and in burst Officer Daniels, the town's police. "Chief," a stern expression clouded his face as he surveyed the scene. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his eyes darting around the room. Tension crackled like electricity. All eyes now landed on Ruth. Would she speak up again? Would she divulge what she overheard? The congregation was on the edge, each person breathless with anticipation. But before she could utter another word, Officer Daniels approached Pastor Reynolds with a knowing look. "I need to speak with you," he said sharply. The pastor stepped back, feigning surprise, but there was something in his eyes. Unease, perhaps? Ruth felt the pit in her stomach deepen. What was happening? "I've received some information," Daniels hesitated, his eyes flicking back to the gathered crowd. "It's about funds and mismanagement, specifically a fund tied to certain initiatives in this very church." A collective gasp rocked through the congregation. Whispers erupted. Ruth's heart raced. Was this connected to what she had overheard? "Pastor," Officer Daniels pressed on, "we need to discuss your finances, all your accounts. You have the community's trust, but it seems there are discrepancies." A tense silence enveloped the room, thick as smoke. Pastor Reynolds' face drained of color, his facade cracking like an old shell. "We'll get through this, right, Ruth?" he stammered, desperately searching her eyes. Her breath hitched. Trust? But there was something else. The weight of his words shifted the narrative once again. "We'll get through this." That familiar smile on his face, the one she once admired, it felt different now. Was he trying to protect himself or wrap them all in more deception? Then came another sound, this time a low moan from Mr. Hargrove, stirring a wave of panic throughout the crowd. "Is he okay?" someone cried out. Just as Ruth opened her mouth to respond, a piercing scream cut through the air. It echoed off the stained glass and held them all in a frozen moment of horror, severing all hope. "What's happening?" someone whispered, a tremor in their voice. In that instant, everything Ruth thought she knew shattered. Friendship, faith, truth, it all unraveled. "Ruth!" a voice called, but her focus was on the scene before her. The crowd was in chaos, and amidst the confusion, a figure in black slipped quietly out the side door, unnoticed. It felt like a film reel skipping. What did that stranger know? Who were they? What secrets were unfolding in the shadows? As the heavy wooden doors swung closed behind the figure, Ruth could hardly comprehend the weight of it all. She stood at a precipice. Her heart raced, her mind scrambled. What had they stumbled into? Was this really only the beginning? Ruth stood frozen, her heart pounding like a drum, the chaos around her blurring into a muffled haze. That stranger in black slipping out had ignited a fire of fear deep in her chest. She could barely breathe. The scene before her felt surreal. Was Mr. Hargrove okay? She couldn't think. Panic rippled through the congregation, a wave of uncertainty drowning their faith. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the sacristy. It jarred everyone, sending a collective shudder through the crowd. What was that? Someone whispered, voices trembling. Tension turned into a tangible force, pulling everyone's eyes towards the noise. Another crash, this one louder and more unsettling. A few people let out gasps. Ruth's heart raced, dread coiled tight inside her. The pastor, still reeling from Officer Daniels' accusations, staggered back, fear flashing across his face. What was happening behind those doors? "Stay calm," Officer Daniels barked, his voice cutting through the fear. He moved toward the sacristy, as hurried footsteps followed behind him. Ruth's legs felt like lead. Should she follow? What was there to uncover? But then, as if summoned by the chaos, a deep, haunting voice boomed from the sacristy. "You've all been fools!" Eyes bulged, and mouths dropped open in shock. Ruth squinted, trying to see who it was, but the doorway was obscured. The voice continued, slithering through the crowd like a snake. "You trust him? You trust the man who's been lying to you all along?" Fear morphed into confusion. The congregation murmured furiously, bewildered by this unexpected voice. "What do you mean?" someone called from the back, trembling. The response was chilling. "Oh, you think Pastor Reynolds is the Good Shepherd? Think again. You've been played for a fool, just like the rest of us." Ruth's heart sank. Could this all be connected? What secrets lay hidden? She glanced around, noting the worried faces of her friends, her neighbors. Officer Daniels pushed the sacristy, door wide open, and in an instant, the scene transformed. Light flooded the room, revealing a figure clad in a long coat, face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. The stranger stepped forward, oozing confidence, yet radiating chaos. As the figure dropped the hat, a collective gasp echoed. "Melanie?" Ruth's voice came out as a whisper, disbelief flooding her. It was a name whispered around town, tied to rumors, ideas of betrayal, even scandal. Melanie smiled, an eerie, crooked smile. "Surprised to see me? Just wait until you hear everything. Your dear pastor isn't the only one with a few secrets to share." Ruth could barely process what she was hearing. Melanie had disappeared years ago, leaving behind a trail of questions and heartbreak. A hush blanketed the church, as the woman eyed the frozen congregation. "Everything you hold dear is about to unravel." "What do you mean?" Ruth finally managed, the words clawing their way out. "Why are you here?" Melanie leaned in closer, her eyes glinting with something dangerous. "That fundraiser? It's not just for Pastor Reynolds. It's a cover for something much bigger." Suddenly, something clicked deep within Ruth's mind, a piece of the puzzle she hadn't considered before. Was she really ready for this revelation? Cries for Mr. Hargrove filled the air, annoyance mingling with fear and confusion. But Melanie's revelation overshadowed them all. "What are you talking about?" An older woman shrieked from the back, desperate for clarity. The world around Ruth spun. Could they believe Melanie? Did they have a choice? Was the pastor truly the villain here? Ruth pressed her palms to her temples, struggling to grasp the unfolding reality. Trust shattered, secrets buried, your whole faith is a house of cards, Melanie continued, her voice sharp and cutting. The truth is darker than any of you can imagine. With that, the ceiling lights flickered ominously, plunging them into half-darkness. Shadows danced, and the congregation held their breath. Was it fear? Was it truth? And then a chilling whisper rippled through the darkness. Everything will change. Ruth watched in horror as the walls closed in, uncertainty gnawing at her heart. Could she trust anyone anymore? The weight of the truth hung heavy in the room, begging to be unveiled. But at what cost? Ruth stood frozen, her heart pounding like a drum, the chaos around her blurring into a muffled haze. That stranger in black, slipping out, had ignited a fire of fear deep in her chest. She could barely breathe. The scene before her felt surreal. Was Mr. Hargrove okay? She couldn't think. Panic rippled through the congregation, a wave of uncertainty drowning their faith. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the sacristy. It jarred everyone, sending a collective shudder through the crowd. What was that? Someone whispered, voices trembling. Tension turned into a tangible force, pulling everyone's eyes towards the noise. Another crash, this one louder and more unsettling. A few people let out gasps. Ruth's heart raced. Dread coiled tight inside her. The pastor, still reeling from Officer Daniels' accusations, staggered back, fear flashing across his face. What was happening behind those doors? "Stay calm," Officer Daniels barked, his voice cutting through the fear. He moved toward the sacristy as hurried footsteps followed behind him. Ruth's legs felt like lead. Should she follow? What was there to uncover? Then, as if summoned by the chaos, a deep, haunting voice boomed from the sacristy. "You've all been fools." Eyes bulged and mouths dropped open in shock. Ruth squinted, trying to see who it was. But the doorway was obscured. The voice continued, slithering through the crowd like a snake. "You trust him? You trust the man who's been lying to you all along?" Fear morphed into confusion. The congregation murmured furiously, bewildered by this unexpected voice. "What do you mean?" Someone called from the back, trembling. The response was chilling. "Oh, you think Pastor Reynolds is the good shepherd? Think again. You've been played for a fool, just like the rest of us." Ruth's heart sank. Could this all be connected? What secrets lay hidden? She glanced around, noting the worried faces of her friends and neighbors. Officer Daniels pushed the sacristy door wide open, and in an instant, the scene transformed. Light flooded the room, revealing a figure clad in a long coat, face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. The stranger stepped forward, oozing confidence, yet radiating chaos. As the figure dropped the hat, a collective gasp echoed. "Melanie?" Ruth's voice came out as a whisper, disbelief flooding her. It was a name whispered around town, tied to rumors of betrayal and scandal. Melanie smiled, an eerie, crooked smile. "Surprised to see me? Just wait until you hear everything. Your dear pastor isn't the only one with a few secrets to share." Ruth could barely process what she was hearing. Melanie had disappeared years ago, leaving behind a trail of questions and heartbreak. A hush blanketed the church as the woman eyed the frozen congregation. Everything you hold dear is about to unravel. What do you mean? Ruth finally managed, the words clawing their way out. Why are you here? Melanie leaned in closer, her eyes glinting with something dangerous. That fundraiser? It's not just for Pastor Reynolds. It's a cover for something much bigger. Suddenly, something clicked deep within Ruth's mind. A piece of the puzzle she hadn't considered before. Was she really ready for this revelation? Cries from Mr. Hargrove filled the air, annoyance mingling with fear and confusion. But Melanie's revelation overshadowed them all. What are you talking about? An older woman shrieked from the back, desperate for clarity. The world around Ruth spun. Could they believe Melanie? Did they have a choice? Was the pastor truly the villain here? Ruth pressed her palms to her temples, struggling to grasp the unfolding reality. Trust shattered, secrets buried. Your whole faith is a house of cards, Melanie continued, her voice sharp and cutting. The truth is darker than any of you can imagine. A crackling sound cut through the tension, and a flicker of the lights stole attention. Just then, someone in the audience screamed, "Look!" Ruth turned and her stomach dropped. A man was emerging from behind the altar, wild-eyed and disheveled. His clothes hung loosely on his frame, and in his hands he held a small box. "We need to stop this! You don't realize what's coming!" he shouted. "Henry?" Ruth gasped, the name escaping her lips. He used to be a member of the church before disappearing without a trace. The entire congregation shifted, confusion taking hold as Henry stepped closer. Visibly shaken. "You have to trust me. Pastor Reynolds isn't just embezzling. He's tied to something sinister. Those funds, they're for a cult, a movement that wants to control everything." Gasps filled the air, stunned faces looking at each other in shock. "A cult?" someone asked, echoed, eyes wide. "What are you talking about?" But before Henry could respond, another crash came from the sacristy, and the lights flickered ominously. Then he opened the box, revealing blood-stained pamphlets hidden inside. "They're coming for all of you!" he yelled. Ruth's heart raced. What was happening? Who was coming? She glanced at Melanie, who was smiling that crooked smile again, her eyes darting between Henry and the congregation. Amused by the chaos, the room felt like it was spinning out of control. Trust was gone, and now fear hung thick in the air, threatening to suffocate them all. "Henry, wait!" Ruth cried, but his eyes were wide with terror. Then the lights went out completely, plunging them into darkness. Panic erupted. Screams bounced off the walls, and in the heart of the chaos, Ruth felt her grip on reality slipping. What had she stumbled into? And who could possibly be trusted now? In that moment, a cold realization washed over her. This was only the beginning. The truth they were all fighting against was far darker than anything they could have ever imagined. And time was running out. Ruth stood frozen in the pitch-black church, the chilling cries and shouts swirling around her like a dark storm. The lights had gone out completely, leaving nothing but silence, and she could hardly hear her own thoughts over the thundering of her heart. Every scream felt like a crack of thunder. The air was thick with fear. She could almost taste it. Henry's frantic voice cut through the madness. "They're coming for all of you!" The box trembled in his grip, a damning secret contained within it. Ruth glanced toward Officer Daniels, hoping he would take charge, but he was lost in the chaos, hands fumbling to illuminate their surroundings with a flashlight that flickered like a dying star. "What'll we do?" someone yelled, panic breaking the thin veneer of order. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced through the darkness and brought the chaos to an abrupt halt. Ruth's skin prickled with dread. "Who was that?" she whispered, the hairs on her neck standing on end. Her heart raced as fear took control. In that moment, the lights flickered back on, revealing a scene none of them could have prepared for. There, standing in the center of the congregation, was Pastor Reynolds. But something was terribly off. He wasn't alone. Flanking him were a group of hooded figures, faces obscured, but their presence radiated authority, an oppressive weight settling over everyone in the room. "What's happening?" someone exclaimed. The hushed whispers spread like fire through the crowd, each person trying to comprehend this sudden invasion. "Enough!" Pastor Reynolds bellowed, voice echoing ominously. "You've been misled by fear." And then he turned to Henry, a twisted smile stretching across his face. "You just don't get it, do you?" "Get what?" Henry stammered, desperation creeping into his voice. It was then that Ruth couldn't hold back the horrifying realization. The box Henry had been clutching slipped from his hands, hitting the floor with a hollow thud. The pamphlets scattered like fallen leaves, revealing their gruesome contents. But then, like a bolt from the blue, Pastor Reynolds pointed a finger directly at Ruth. "You wanted the truth?" he snarled. "You are far more entwined in this than you know." Her breath caught in her throat. "What are you talking about?" But before he could reply, one of the hooded figures stepped forward, removing their mask with a dramatic flourish. The crowd gasped collectively. It was Alice, the church secretary. "Alice?" Ruth's heart dropped. "You too?" Alice smirked, a chilling gleam in her eyes. "Oh, Ruth, you have no idea. I've been playing my part for years. And the truth is that we've been waiting for you to discover your role in this." "Role?" Ruth felt dizzy. "What role?" Alice stepped closer, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper, enticing and dangerous. "Were you really that naive? All these years, you've been at the center of our plans. You've been the one we were building everything around." Ruth recoiled as a sickening realization twisted in her gut. What did that mean? How long had this been the plan? Were her memories, her trust, all part of some grand deception? "Have you figured it out yet?" Of despair. She was anchored to the moment, caught in the current of confusion and betrayal, unsure if she was a pawn or something greater. A heavy silence blanket seemed to descend. All eyes turned to her, anticipation hanging thick in the air. Ruth could hardly breathe. What did they know about her? How deep did this go? In that fatal instant, just as everything was spiraling, another figure stumbled through the side door, bloodied and bruised. Yet to discover, Ruth stood there, heart hammering against her ribs, staring at the chaos unfolding before her. The panicked cries and wild movements swirled like a storm, but nothing could prepare her for the apparition that stumbled through the door. The figure was bloodied and bruised, barely able to stand. "Help! They're coming!" The voice was raw, desperate, and unmistakably familiar. Ruth's breath caught. It was Ethan, her childhood friend who had vanished years ago under mysterious circumstances. Gasps rippled through the crowd, confusion melding with disbelief. "Ethan? Is it really you?" Ruth's voice trembled as she stepped forward. But in that instant, The atmosphere shifted again. "Ruth, I don't have time!" he shouted, wild eyes darting around. "The cult!" "Ethan, wait!" she called after him. But the room erupted into chaos once more as the hooded figures flanked the pastor, their presence thick with menace. Ethan pressed on, desperation flushing his cheeks. "They've been watching. You can't trust any of them." Just as he spoke, a loud pounding echoed against the wooden door leading outside. Officer Daniels bounded toward it, flashlight beam bouncing wildly. "Hold your ground," he barked, eyes narrowing at the loud banging. "We need to secure this place." "What do you mean we can't trust them?" Ruth managed, not ready to believe this was really happening. Tears pooled in her eyes as her world unraveled before her. The pastor's grin widened. It was unsettling. "Ethan's lost his mind. He doesn't know the truth about the power that's ours." "Power?" Ethan shot back, a wild spark igniting in his eyes. "You don't know the half of it, Pastor. The truth is buried beneath lies, and they want you all to keep your mouths shut." With a sudden crash, the doors burst open, and a group of shadowy figures stormed in, faces cloaked, but movements aggressive. Panic surged. A member of the crowd screamed, and everyone pressed back, fear palpable. "Get back!" Officer Daniels shouted, brandishing his flashlight as if it were a weapon. The hooded figures moved closer, eyes glinting underneath their masks. But then Ethan lunged forward. "No!" he cried, reaching for them. And just as he did, a low, rumbling roar echoed throughout the church, causing the very walls to vibrate. Shock filled Ruth's body, and she stumbled back, heat rising in her chest as horrors unfolded. The hooded figures froze, and in that moment, something strange happened. One of them stepped forward, dramatically unmasking, revealing a familiar face. Jessica, Ruth's old friend, and once the church youth leader. "What, Jessica?" Ruth gasped, disbelief flooding her voice. Jessica's mischievous grin that used to flash at them in carefree days now twisted into something sinister. "I'm sorry, but it's time to reveal the truth?" Jessica's tone dripped with mock sympathy. "You think you've been betrayed? Oh, dear Ruth, you won't believe who the true mastermind is." The congregation gasped, confusion electrifying the air. "I did not intend for this," Pastor Reynolds interrupted, his calm demeanor cracking. "All of you need to understand the fate of this church, this community. You think you can control everything?" Jessica sneered, cutting him off. "No, it's you who's being controlled." Ruth felt her chest tighten, panic flooding her. What do you mean?" And then, just as questions erupted throughout the crowd, at that exact moment, Ethan collapsed to the ground, clutching his head, convulsing, gasping for breath. "Ethan!" Ruth cried, rushing to his side. But as she knelt beside him, she noticed something on the ground. A small device, blinking ominously, resting between them. "No! Don't!" Jessica shrieked, eyes wild. But it was too late. A surge of energy shot through the room, bright lights exploding around them. As the chaos spiraled, the truth unfurled, revealing hidden allegiances and a web of deception Ruth could never have imagined. The room darkened again, flickering lights revealing twisted faces, each hiding secrets of their own. The last thing Ruth saw before everything went black was Pastor Reynolds' face, cold, calculating, a monster, lurking behind a mask of kindness. "Everything you believe is a lie," echoed through the darkness, fading into silence. And just as Ruth's consciousness slipped away, a single thought blared in her mind. Who truly held the power? Ruth felt the darkness envelop her, a heavy blanket smothering every flicker of thought. She could hear the frantic breaths around her, the chaos echoing like a hollow drum. But then, just when everything seemed lost, when reality blurred and panic surged like a tidal wave, a blinding light pierced through the shadows. Ruth shielded her eyes, squinting against the glare. Suddenly, the world came into focus. The hooded figures surrounded the pastor, their menacing stances shifting. But there was something more. A low humming sound electrified the air, a vibration that rattled her bones. "Ethan!" she shouted, rushing toward her friend, sprawled on the ground. His eyes were wide, reflecting confusion, but suddenly he stopped convulsing. He sat straight up, gasping for breath, and with a swift movement, "We're too many. This wasn't just about Pastor Reynolds anymore." "One chance!" Ethan shouted, voice choked with determination. In that moment, the lights flickered violently, casting eerie shadows against the walls, and the entire church quaked, as if responding to some unseen force. And then, out of nowhere, something unimaginable happened. A portal of blinding white light erupted into existence just behind the altar, illuminating everything in its path. The congregation gasped, fear mixing with awe. It whirled like a storm, wild and chaotic, suspending time itself. "Do it now!" Ethan screamed, eyes locked on Ruth, filled with desperate hope. "We have to get them out!" "Get who out?" But she didn't have time to process as the light spilled into the crowd, drawing them closer. A siren's song luring them to the edge. The hooded figures recoiled, uncertainty etched on their faces, suddenly vulnerable in the light's embrace. "That's what they've been hiding," Ethan exclaimed. "This isn't just about us. It's a gateway." Ruth's breath hitched. It made sense now. All the whispers, the rumors, and the threats. This was the truth behind the cult. They had been guarding something far greater than they had feared. But before they could react, the figures sprang into action. Rushing toward the portal, driven by unearthly instincts. "No!" Jessica shouted, her voice cracking with panic. "They can't escape. They must be contained." "Why?" Ruth felt dizzy, pulsing with urgency. She had to understand. "Because we need them," Alice yelled back, her eyes fierce. "We need their power to control what's beyond." Suddenly the air shifted painfully. The light flickered, and Ruth sensed a chilling presence seep into the room. Then, in the blink of an eye, the hooded figures lunged toward the portal, their bodies merging into a whirlwind of shadows. The chaotic scene cracked open secrets she had never expected. She turned, heart pounding, to find Ethan reeling back, his expression turning into horror. "No, stop them!" But it was too late. The figures melded seamlessly with the light, their screams echoing, morphing into something otherworldly. The space warped, becoming a vortex, and everything spiraled. Ruth stumbled, the sensation dizzying. It was a tugging pull, a magnetic force drawing her closer. She felt her heart race, confusion flooding her mind. Then, a voice echoed, deep and resonant, reverberating through the room. "You are the key to this world, Ruth," it boomed, "and you must make a choice." A paralyzing chill washed over her. The stakes were never this high. The relationships she thought she understood, the loyalty, the friendship, the safety within their tiny community. suddenly unraveled into a chaotic tapestry of deceit and hidden agendas. "There's no way out," someone shouted, but she barely registered it. "Will you step through, or will you remain?" the voice asked again, pressing into her mind. Questions raced through her head. What lay beyond? What was the true nature of these figures? And how deeply was she involved? Ruth's voice faltered as she felt the weight of their gaze, her entire world. Lingering on that impossible choice, in a heartbeat, everything was at stake, and she had to decide. Would she step into the unknown, or was she destined to remain in a world built on deceit? The swirling energy whirled, and the question echoed within the church. Who was truly in control? Ruth stood, heart racing, as the blinding light pulsed around her. It felt alive, swirling with energy, teasing her with the thoughts of escape and clarity. She was torn between fear and hope. The fate of everyone hanging by a thread. She wanted to trust Ethan, to believe that this was a chance, but the shadows in the room loomed heavy. "Step through!" Ethan shouted, desperation etched on his face. The urgency in his voice gripped her heart. But just as she took a step forward, trying to reconcile her swirling emotions, the air crackled, and suddenly a deafening explosion rocked the church. The entire building trembled, sending dust flying from the rafters. The light flickered, and with it, the shadows of the hooded figures began to warp and twist uncontrollably. It was chaos. Ruth covered her head, instinctively shielding herself from the incoming debris as pieces of the ceiling fell with a thunderous crash. "Get down!" yelled Officer Daniels, raising his flashlight as a shield, his face drained of color. Amidst the panic, Ruth caught a glimpse of Melanie, who had been silently observing the chaos, a confident smirk plastered on her face. "I knew this would happen," she declared. And with that, the energy around her swamped into a dark aura. "Time's up!" Time froze. The atmosphere thickened. The portal flickered violently, swirling dark and light in a reckless dance. Then it burst open with agonizing force, and everything shattered. Ruth felt herself being pulled, the world around her spiraling, the cries fading. And just when she thought she would be consumed by the chaos, she found herself standing in a vast, white void. Others stood beside her, but their features were blurred, masked by the blinding light. "What happened?" she gasped, eyes wide. But before anyone could respond, a figure materialized from the brightness. A woman draped in light, face calm, with an unsettling serenity. "Welcome to your true beginning," she spoke softly, reverberating within, authority that made the space hum. At the same moment, the chaos outside faded into silence. The church was gone. The familiar faces scattered. Confusion locked Ruth in place. "Where are we?" she demanded, feeling her heart thud heavily in her chest. "Wherever you want to be." The woman smiled, but the glint in her eyes sent chills down Ruth's spine. There was something inherently wrong, something forbidding about her presence. Ethan stepped forward, brows furrowed. "Is this a trick? We need to go back." "Oh, you think you can go back?" the woman chuckled, a light that echoed unsettlingly in the void. "You think any of this is a mistake? You've been destined for so much more." "What do you mean?" Ruth pleaded, feeling the pit of despair settle in her stomach. What was happening? Why did this feel like a trap? And that's when the truth hit her like a slap to the face. The swirling energy began to morph again, and she saw flashes, images of her life, her childhood dreams, family moments, and then betrayal. Bits and pieces of her existence twisted and blurred, revealing the tapestry of connections she never fully understood. Ruth, the woman's voice grew more intense. You were never just a pawn. You are the architect, and every choice you made brought you to this moment. You're the heart of the past, present, and future. An overwhelming wave of nausea flooded Ruth. It felt like a dark wave crashing against her mind. Her breath quickened. "No, I don't understand!" "Yes, you do," the woman insisted, stepping closer to her. "You're the one who invited this all to happen. The cult, the pastor, they were waiting for you. You set everything in motion without even realizing it." Stunned silence enveloped them. Ruth's mind raced, her thoughts weaving frantic threads. The shadows of doubt wrapped around her, squeezing tight. "Let's talk about your parents," the woman continued, an icy smile on her lips. "You know, they weren't just churchgoers." Ruth's stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" "They were leaders in this society, Ruth. They built it and left it to you." Shock flooded Ruth. Panic and betrayal echoed off the walls of her mind. Everything she believed was a lie. "No, this can't be." "True, isn't it?" The woman raised an eyebrow, the air around them heavy with the weight of revelation. Amid the whirlpool of disbelief, a sudden spark ignited deep within Ruth. She wasn't lost. She was powerful. "What do you want from me?" The woman grinned, the shadows growing again. "Not what I want. What do you want? Power is at your fingertips. Control everything just like your parents did. Or break the cycle." Ruth's heart raced as the gravity of her choices settled in. The void pulsed, waiting for her answer. But who could she trust? She felt the darkness closing in, mixing with the bright possibility of light. "Choose wisely," the woman taunted, the air thick with anticipation. And in that moment, as Ruth stood poised between light and shadow, a thought burned brightly in her mind. What was her true purpose in this twisted game? Time stood still, and all she could think about was what came next, aware that the answers would change everything. Forever. Ruth stood alone in the blinding light, words swirling around her like leaves caught in a whirlwind. Ethan cried out from beside her, urgency lacing his voice, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from the woman in front of her. Every ounce of certainty she'd clung to felt like it was unraveling, thread by fragile thread. "What do you want from me?" she managed to whisper, her voice barely a sound against the chaos. "I want you to embrace your true destiny," the woman said, her smile glistening with something sinister. "You've inherited more than you know." But just as the air thickened with the weight of her words, an unsettling rumble echoed through the void. The ground shuddered beneath them. Panic ignited again as the lights flickered, illuminating the faces around her. Confusion, fear, anger painted on every expression. Then, with a gasp, another figure stumbled through the portal, knocking the first one aside. It was her mother. Ruth felt everything freeze for a moment. Camilla, the woman she thought disappeared years ago, stood before them, shaking, eyes wide with terror. "Mom!" Ruth cried, feeling both relief and disbelief wash over her. But her mother looked different, distraught. "Ruth, you have to listen to me," she shouted, her voice breaking. "They're lying to you. This isn't what you think." "What do you mean?" Ruth could hardly breathe. "You're here? How did you find me? What's going on?" "You're in danger." Camilla rushed forward. "I tried to protect you from the truth, but it's too late. They're using you." "Using me?" The words sank deep, swirling with every other betrayal she had felt. The woman, this embodiment of darkness, scoffed, her calm demeanor faltering. "Camilla, you cannot interfere. You know the consequences of lying." "Consequences?" Camilla shot back, panic rising in her voice. "You think this is about control? She's just a pawn in your game." And then a spine-chilling laugh echoed through the void. "Pawn? No. She holds the ultimate key. You just couldn't see it." "See what, Ruth?" demanded, trying to piece together the storm of chaos. "What key?" Suddenly, the walls of the void shifted. The air crackled like electricity. She felt a hum inside her, a strange energy surging. Then it dawned on her. "What if I'm not just a key?" Ruth whispered, sensing something shift again. "What if it's more like I'm something else?" "Exactly," the woman said, eyes gleaming like daggers. "You're the one who can unleash the power we've been waiting for. Or destroy us." The ground trembled again, but this time it felt different, more powerful. Heart racing, Ruth felt a pull inside her, a new ripple of awareness. She wasn't just standing there. She was connected to this energy, this weird, otherworldly force. "Ruth, don't listen to her," Camilla cried out, fear twisting her features. "You have to trust me." But just as Ruth was about to reply, the world changed. The portal exploded with brilliant light, a violent burst that sent shockwaves through the space, throwing them all to the ground. Struggling to regain her footing, Ruth suddenly caught sight of Ethan, who seemed frozen. His expression morphed, eyes wide yet dim, as if he was fading into the light itself. "Ethan!" she screamed. But a great force pulled him away, disintegrating his form into shimmering dust. "No!" Ruth lunged forward, but the darkness wrapped around her, squeezing tight, suffocating her. "Ethan! Ruth!" her mother shouted, reaching for her, but it was too late. The shadows grew, swallowing Ethan whole, and with that, a shocking truth hit Ruth like a tidal wave. "Ethan was never just your ally," the woman hissed, the glee in her voice unmistakable. "He was always a part of this." A surge of betrayal erupted inside her. "No, you're lying!" Ruth cried. But as she glanced back at the fading spot where Ethan stood only moments ago, she remembered the truth in his eyes, the way he'd held her when she felt alone. Grief mingled with rage. Could this all be part of some twisted game? A ruse to manipulate her? The woman's laughter echoed in the void as Camilla's scream pierced the air. "Ruth, don't let them win!" And all at once, Ruth felt a flicker of rebellion ignite within her. She stood on the edge of something monumental, something life-altering that would redefine everything she thought she knew. But what would it mean to fight against the very fabric of her existence? "Make your choice!" the woman demanded, voice echoing in the void. "Join us or be consumed." With her heart pounding, Ruth realized the truth, the power, and the deception. It was all intertwined. The real game was only just beginning, and she had to decide. Was she willing to gamble everything, including her life, to unearth the truth? Or was she going to embrace a dark destiny that came with her mother's shadows? The choice loomed before her, and all she could think as she stood there, teetering on the brink of darkness and light, was, what if choosing meant losing everything she loved? Ruth stood shrouded in light, her heart pounding as she confronted the swirling chaos of her life. The reality of her lineage twisted in her mind, each revelation a knife slicing away her certainty. She felt her mother's presence, warmth against the cold depths of this void. "Listen to me, Ruth," Camilla cried, her eyes wide with urgency. "Fight it. You hold the power to change everything." But uncertainty gripped Ruth, and the sinister allure of the woman before them tempted her with visions of control and greatness. The light pulsed around her like a heartbeat, drawing her in, promising power. "You can reshape this world or remain a pawn," the woman hissed, her voice dripping with temptation. "No!" Ruth yelled, feeling a fierce determination well up within her. "I refuse to be anyone's pawn." The energy around her shifted, an electric pulse that vibrated through her core. She could see the shadows spinning, trying to manipulate her, but the flicker of truth ignited her spirit. "You don't control me!" she shouted, shaking off the remnants of doubt. With that declaration, the swirling light exploded, and the hooded figures trembled. "No, what is happening?" the woman screamed, her facade cracking. "You're chosen!" Ruth locked eyes with her mother, strength surging through their connection. "I'm not chosen for your twisted games. I choose my own path." The words burst from her lips, and as she spoke, the light enveloped the shadows, absorbing their darkness, pulling their power into her. "Ruth!" Ethan's voice sliced through the chaos, a plea and a challenge wrapped in one. Camilla extended her hand, her expression fierce, resolute. "Activate it!" Ethan's shout snapped the fragments together. "We can end this." The light surged again, and in a flash, she felt the weight of generations behind her. Her parents' choices, the burdens they carried, and the freedom she now seized. "I take control," she declared, channeling every ounce of her will, every fierce heartbeat into the light. The darkness howled, echoing around her as the void began to fracture, shadows collapsing inward like a dying star. "No! You'll regret this!" the woman screeched. But panic marred her confidence, the shadows dissipating like smoke in the wind. With a roar, the portal expanded, consuming everything in its grasp, until finally, silence. Ruth found herself standing alone in a golden landscape bathed in sunlight. The struggles, the fear, the pain, it all fell away like autumn leaves. She turned to see Ethan emerge from the bright haze, a laugh jumping from his lips, pure and free. "Ruth, you did it!" He rushed to her, and she felt the warmth of his embrace, dissipating the last remnants of doubt. "Mom, we did it!" Ruth turned, seeking Camilla, who stepped forward, her eyes shimmering with pride. "I always knew you'd be stronger than they thought," her mother whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. "You broke the cycle, Ruth. You saved us all." But in that moment, the shadows still lingered at the edges of their new reality, whispers of the past haunting the air. "Will we ever be free?" Ruth asked, fear creeping back in. Camilla nodded, determination etched on her face. "As long as we remember the truth, we'll stay united. Together we forge a brighter path." With each shared smile, they stepped deeper into the light, ready to reclaim their lives, their community, and their truth. The bonds of family revitalized their spirits, and in the embrace of the sun, they found hope. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed in the distance. The journey doesn't end here. It was Officer Daniels, appearing amidst the golden rays, a proud grin cutting through the worry. The community would rise stronger, armed with honesty and unity, as the horizon stretched endlessly. Before them, Ruth could feel the weight of her past transforming into the light, guiding her into the future. She took a deep breath, surrounded by her loved ones, ready for whatever lay ahead. This was her moment, unshackled, powerful, and free. Don't wait any longer. You have to subscribe right now to the channel so you don't miss any of our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this epic ending. We want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this all ends. Your support means everything.